to another episode of MasterClass CX, a podcast where we talk about everything to do with customer experience and really keeping the customer at the heart of everything we do within our businesses, within our organizations, and within our practices. This episode is going to be, again, slightly different from the previous one. We're going to be speaking to someone from the financial services and advisory space. We have Rickson Dsouza, who will be joining us in just a few moments from now to talk about his unique model in where he has gone ahead and actually niched down in terms of the number of customers he onboards every year. Whilst we keep hearing about customer acquisition and growing your customer base, Rickson seems to have gone off in slightly the opposite direction, and I'm sure that that's working really, really well for him and for his organization as well. So it's going to be a good, interesting conversation. Stay tuned, stay here, and we'll get this podcast started in just a little bit. Hey everyone, and thank you again for joining us on MasterClass CX. As per my introduction, we have Rickson Dsouza with us, who's here finally. Rickson, thank you very much for joining us, and pleasure to have you on MasterClass CX. Rickson, just before we kind of dive into really the meat of this podcast, would you mind just giving our viewers and listeners a little bit of background in terms of just what you've done over the last few years, if that's all right?
Absolutely. So guys, my name is Rickson Dsouza, as you know already. I am a life insurance and a financial services professional. So most of my work really revolves around estate planning and estate equalization and transference of wealth from one generation to another, really. I've been in the UAE for over 38 or 39 years of my life. I was born and raised in the Middle East, and I spent some time in the south of India in university. But Dubai is home, and my first job was in the life insurance business. It's a commissioned only job, and I got into it in October 17th, 1999, just because I enjoyed the idea of being able to have 3 conversations a day with people. And the fact that the industry allowed us to work without any bureaucracy. I'm also a big fan of the idea and the mindset that if there's anything I can do where only my effort counts and it didn't have to do with functions that other people did, then that result, based on my own effort, I'm excited about being in the industry like that. And this is the life insurance business as we know it. From a transformation standpoint, I'd like to say, maybe in the back of the screen somewhere you can see a picture of me and my wife right there. It's there, right there. And that was about 12 years ago. So I've transformed my life in terms of not just the personal, physical, and family related stuff and the whole person concept, but also from the business standpoint. And with that mean change of clientele, the market we were servicing, and the whys behind that as well. But I think we'll cover more of that stuff as we go along this podcast. So I'm ready, Nithin, and whenever you want to fire away with your questions, I'm here.
Yeah. Thanks a ton for that, Rickson. No, absolutely. I think your personal transformation has been quite a large part as well, and great. I mean, I'm sure a lot of us can take a lot away just from that personal transformation as well. So thanks for that, Rickson. Let's very quickly kind of dive into how you kind of started off in the financial advisory space, and what have you really seen that's kind of changed from the time you started right up to 2023?
I got into the life insurance in the financial services business really in October 99, and I was 21 years old at the time, 22 years old at the time, just out of college, and I was exploring what are the possible career options for myself. What I enjoyed about being, what I enjoyed about the conversation I had with my father, who was an insurance broker at the time, a general insurance broker though. What I really enjoyed about this conversation with him was, he said, have a chat with my friend. He's available first thing in the morning to see you at 7:15. He's a really busy guy. Have a chat and see whether you'd like to enter into a commission-only role. And to be fair, when I met this individual, it was a complete brick and mortar setup. I walked into a sales office with maybe about 30 or 40 desks. The guy who ran the shop was a guy called Maurice Serrao. He was my first mentor, and he was the regional sales manager of this business. And honestly, he told me a couple of things. He said, you can make as little or as much money as you want. Your job is to sell life insurance and savings products and services and help deliver a check to people when they need it the most. And he said the third thing about it is you can work as many or as few hours a day as you want to. There's no bureaucracy in this. This is really completely up to you. It's self-driven, self-effort. And over the years, that specific part of it for me has not changed. I still work as many or as few hours a day as I want. But what has changed today in the industry and the generations that have followed is we've noticed there are fewer younger people joining the business because it takes a while for you to settle into this industry. It may not happen overnight. There are lots of things that have changed from a technology standpoint today, definitely. And the use of this, for instance, we're recording this podcast in this manner. And I'll give you some history on this. If I needed to listen to a decent cassette or a tape or listen to some content on about the life insurance business from a sales coach or from a specific concept that I thought may be useful for my clients, I had to carry not even a Discman at the time, because I had to carry a Walkman. Discmans were in, but I had the Walkman because the content was available on cassettes only. They didn't have CDs even at that point in time for this kind of content. So it was cassettes. And that meant whenever I caught a bus, took a taxi, I put my earphones on and I listened to a sales coach talk about life insurance and the angle and the products and the services. Whereas today, we have access to all this information at our fingertips. When I got into the life insurance business, I also was required to cold call because I didn't have any clientele and there was no real medium to go and approach clients. We had to buy directories of the street, use designated desks for, to get in touch with the client. This has changed completely today. Today, we've got 4 or 5 different social media platforms that I use personally to get my content out to the world, to land more clients. This has changed completely. But where things may have shifted a little bit more is one thing that has not changed with the industry is you still need to put in a certain number of years, a certain number of months, a certain number of big, hardworking years in the business to be able to establish yourself and develop your base. The generations that have come after have got access to so many other roles today that don't require the same thing. And I'll go back to something I read in this book on called The Outliers. And one of the things that was mentioned in that book, which stuck with me, is to establish yourself as an industry expert or an expert on any subject matter. You need to have spent about 10,000 hours doing that role, that job. I don't know how many people today have that grit, determination, and endurance to last 10,000 hours, just because there are so many distractions and so many other alternatives available along the way. That is probably what I think has changed most of all, not so much as much the technology and things like that.
Yeah, perfect. I think that word endurance is really, really key in that, isn't it, Rickson? I mean, yeah, you can kind of come by, but how long are you kind of, willing to stay and put in the effort? I think that's really the key in this industry. Mm-hmm. Clearly, MasterClass CX is all about, customer experience and how we kind of, look to kind of spread the learning really within the community in terms of, enhancing that customer experience, that overall customer experience. Now, you've kind of been in this industry for a very, very long time. And based on your experience, is there a real focus on the customer? I mean, when you overall kind of look at it, let's say at a 50,000 level view, do you actually see, advisors focusing really on customer needs? Or is it really in terms of, hey, what's going to hit my bank account, at the end of the month, or the commissions? I mean, or has that, and have you seen that shift as well, over the years?
So, as I mentioned earlier, the way most of our industry functions is based on commissions. That's what the remuneration is for the advisors. So I would say that there are a couple of things over here that stand out or scream out to me. One is if you consider the market, which is the United Arab Emirates, we're in a transient marketplace. And I say transient because advisors and clients are both transient. So I said, I've been in this country for over 40 years, but I may be a dying breed. There are lots of people that are living over here that come for short-term roles, earn some money, and there's a lot of the grab and go mindset. Unfortunately, with that, the focus around customer services is maybe on the decline, or the customer experience, on the client itself, maybe on the decline. And a lot of people are in this for their personal gain. And I honestly believe that if you can be that individual that can think about it from a long-term perspective and what is in the interest of a client, by default, you will make your dollars that are required to sustain yourself and maybe even more by just doing the right thing. Unfortunately, I think now this, I don't want to paint a blanket sort of a thing that says all advisors are like this, or all brokerages are like this, or all banks are like this. But certainly there are outliers in every industry where people stand out and are doing absolutely the right thing, in the right manner. And I see that success for them, long-term success for them, is greater, simply because that's the mindset and that's what they're chasing. But majority of the market, I would say generally, and this is not just the UAE, but most of these transient markets where you have an expat population, a lot of the advisors are as transient as the client, right? A lot of the people that run these businesses, whether it's the sales manager on top, the sales director on top, who are doing a job per se and who are interested in that bottom line, what is my bonus for making this business profitable for this 1 year, without what are the repercussions to the client 5 years from now after they've bought this dud product from me, right? That needs to change. And that move, I don't see it happening at a rapid pace at all. To be fair, I don't see it happening at all. And like I said, there are outliers. There are a handful of people. If you did a search, you'd find them in the same industry for 15 years, for 20 years. The clients are still with them. They move with them. They're thinking long-term, but this is a minority. This is a tiny minority.
Right. And that kind of leads me into my next question as well. Clearly, if you look at organizations, everyone's really after, client acquisition, growing their customer base, and really kind of, trying to bring more clients on the books. You seem to have gone in a slightly different direction. In fact, in an opposite direction, right? Where you have kind of scaled down, niched down quite a bit. I think you just take on a handful of, customers, onboard a handful of customers, each year. Clearly, there's been some thought that has gone into that process. It hasn't happened overnight. But if you can just talk us through what's kind of behind that, that thinking. What's the mindset? And I'm sure some of our listeners can possibly take something away from that as well.
Sure, absolutely. So basically, we went in this direction, but we were only going to work with high net worth entrepreneurs. So let me give you the reasons and the background behind this. About 12 years ago, I was morbidly obese. I was 138 kilos. I just had my first child. My daughter Leah was born. And as a toddler learning how to walk, she could outwalk me because I was so morbidly obese. I had health issues. I was constantly tired. I was working 14 hours a day, 6 days a week. I had a team supporting me. And I ran a brokerage firm parallelly. I had 60 advisors represent us. It was draining on me. And at that point in time, I want to call it misguided ambition, because it was the only way I thought I could succeed is by putting in more hours. Putting in more hours without any definition of who the right fit client was, no segregation. Just let's talk to anybody. If you were the genie and said, Rickson, I can refer you to any client, who do you want? My answer would be anybody. No problem. Anybody. Yes, I want the more successful people because that meant we got a bigger commission check, but anybody will work. Honestly, this was the rule. And over a period of time, my health took a beating. A turning point in my life was when the insurance company I represented very strongly, and when I approached them to purchase my own life insurance policy after becoming a father, I went in for a relatively larger cover. They charged me 100% more than the average person my age at 33. This was a turning point for me. And along the way, I also went through a fair bit of business coaching with institutions like the Strategic Coach in Toronto. I started making my way through places like this, $1 Million Roundtable, top of the table meetings. We attended all of these sessions, and I realized there is more than one way to achieve that financial success, even for myself. One thing I was very clear on is I wanted to be that person that showed up with a check when the worst happened to my clients. Then the question really came down to, how much of time and bandwidth do I have? And how many people am I in a position to do this for successfully? With this entire proposition came the fact that my service team had to make sure that the clients were absolutely taken care of. My job was to meet the clients, engage them, understand their problems, take care of a solution. My service team was supposed to make sure their premiums were in place, they needed receipts, they needed any documentation done, change of beneficiaries, all of that stuff was sorted out as well. And we had a very well-oiled machine, except for the fact that my health was deteriorating at a very rapid pace. And a question that was asked to me many years ago as strategic coach was, who do you want to be your hero to? I had to sit down and pause for a whole day or two where I sat and thought about who were the people that I most enjoyed spending my time with. We wrote out the description. We basically started categorizing our clients or segmenting them. And I put down my top 10 or 15 clients that I had the best relationships with. And what we drew then was the characteristics that these 15 people had in common, right? And what came out as a majority was these 15 people were either high-performing entrepreneurs, right? Married with children from the subcontinent or the Arab world predominantly. And some of them were C-suite executives. And the reasons that we had this in common, these were the factors that were in common, is these were people that were willing to trust you completely. They didn't have the time or the bandwidth to manage this, but they needed a solution. Their family did not know what to do if something went wrong. And their job was to ensure that if the worst happened, someone would just come up and show up to the family and say, this is what he or she did for you. Here's your solution. You guys are okay financially, whether it's a life insurance payout, encashments from savings, investments. Over a course of time, I realized that these 14 or 15 individuals, my top 10, 15 clients, were people that actually opened up to me completely. I knew about their finances more than anybody else in their family. What was the debt? What was the valuation on their property? What did their bonuses look like? What were the various accounts they had, their savings, the online platforms? And I realized all we needed to do was copy and paste or re-engineer this type of a client. And because their net worths were greater than the average person, it required now for us, for me as an individual and for my team that helped me with the service proposition, to land really at that point in time, I'm talking about 8 or 10 years ago, about 14 or 15 clients a year versus exactly a year prior to that, as going through 132 transactions. It was, we cut it down by 90%. We came down to just 10% of the number of clients that we onboarded, with the revenues relatively being the same or even greater. So that idea of segmentation came from the realization that the time that I have available per day is limited. And I needed to also focus on my lifestyle, my life and my longevity and my health for my family too. Fast forward a couple of years now, not a couple of years, fast forward a decade now, and we've specialized completely on the high net worth entrepreneurial space, right? And really speaking, what I enjoy doing the most for them is putting in place that right structure of life insurance products and services that can help them deal with most, if not all, of their liquidity, wealth transference, succession planning, and estate equalization woes, right? And today, what we need to make things happen is probably about 4 or 5 new clients a year. I think the best part about that is those 4 or 5 clients a year that we get access to just come to us organically, either through the network where we're spending lesser time hunting and spending more time in quality conversations with existing clients as well as with new clients. So the change is predominantly in that space. And it's more just to ensure that we can deliver the right proposition and nobody's stretched, nobody's ignored.
Oh, brilliant. I'm not too sure how many organizations or even, smaller businesses actually kind of go through that. Clearly, I think it has taken some time, very clear thought to kind of go down that path. When we were speaking a couple of weeks ago, I think one thing that you also mentioned is how do you kind of qualify these customers you actually onboard. And whilst I will not, expect you to kind of go into the metric or the framework that you use, you did mention something in terms of, the personal connection. Can you just elaborate just a little bit on that? And that trust factor that you want to try and build with these customers that you onboard.
So, they say time is money, so dollars are important. Don't get me wrong. I'm not living in that fantasy world where everything is romanticized and we can live on love and fresh air. But the way I look at things is we've got 2 major qualifiers or disqualifiers for clients. If it was an ideal world where there was no money needed on the table, would I do this for this client for free? And if the answer is yes, then great, we're through the first barrier. The second question we have always is, can I invite you home for a meal with my family? Can I see my family and your family having a connect over a meal? And the reason for that is people I invite into my home, into my life, are people I can think of as long-term, as lifelong relationships, right? So that's a big disqualifier or a qualifier for it, if you may. So apart from that, the dollar part of it is very critical, which is why I said we work with high net worth entrepreneurs today and ultra high net worth entrepreneurs. Basically, that eliminates the amount of time I need to spend in sourcing a deal and ensuring that the people we do bring on board. Now, there's a dual sort of purpose that's met, which is they know that they're dealing with somebody who's an expert in their space. And I know that I'm working with somebody who I think we can have a lifetime relationship with. There's a reason for this. The product and services we sell, unlike, and not to belittle any other industry, but unlike a car or a house or any other asset class, it does not end with the sale of that asset. In fact, my delivery really comes into play even when the person who made the decision to buy our products and services has already passed on. So the longevity that is required for me to stay focused and committed to this client to take care of a potential death claim, for instance, we don't know that lifespan. It could be until they pass away or until I pass away. So that thought process going into that mindset of lifetime relationships and lifetime, that kind of a mindset, I think it allows me to be more centered on ensuring that we don't just land this client, but that the customer service standpoint, the user experience, that is absolutely on point. They need to be as excited in retaining me as an advisor as I am in seeing them more often, more frequently, and meeting more people like them.
Sure. And just follow up to that. Do you have any customer churn at all? I mean,
what do you mean by customer churn? Tell me, what does that mean?
So do you actually see customers kind of leaving your, leaving you in terms of keeping their business?
This is always expected. I'll tell you why. I read an interesting meme many years ago. It says, you cannot please everyone. You are not a jar of Nutella. This is not an ad for Nutella. But the point is, there are people come into your life, you come into people's life to serve a purpose. While there are all these metrics that you put in place to say, is this a lifetime relationship? Do we connect on these levels? Are our families right? X, Y, Z. Yes. But then there is always a possibility that some things change along the way. Individuals may have different goals, different requirements. There are certain people that have progressed into a space where I no longer may be the right advisor for them. They may have moved out of the UAE, for example, into a specific tax jurisdiction that requires them to seek advisors who are more qualified and are licensed to operate in those markets. My job, even over there, would be to help them identify the right advisors if they don't have them already, and even potentially facilitate a meeting to have a proper handover done. This is always a possibility. And of course, there is this possibility which nobody wants to admit can happen, but you could do everything right, but you may still not be able to satisfy somebody's requirements, somebody's needs, somebody's wants. So I'm not also living in that la la land kind of a space where I'm thinking that every customer is with me for the rest of my life. But I enter those relationships ensuring that my mindset towards them is lifetime, right? It's not short-term transaction. It has to be lifelong relationship. So it's never determined or predetermined by the size or the value of the transaction, as much as it is determined or predetermined by the connect, the chemistry, and the quality of the client, and how close they're centered to our definition of the right fit client.
And Rickson, just as a follow-up as well, then, I mean, clearly you have this vision, right? You're dealing with a certain, category of entrepreneurs, so high net worth individuals, as you mentioned. Clearly, their wants are very different. How do you all service these clients? I mean, it cannot be, the vanilla type of servicing that you typically kind of see. Clearly, you have a team. I mean, how do you drive that vision, that you have for these customers with your team as well?
I've actually been blessed to have a fantastic team supporting me throughout. Um, I've always been someone that focused just on my own personal unique ability, but this has become more pronounced over the years, where today 90% of the stuff that I do is only that small thing that I do well, which is sitting in front of a customer, understanding from a bird's eye view what the potential problems are, coming up with the strategies for it. But the actual final calculation part of it, putting the presentation together, piecing so many different bits of information, finding the right fit product for this client or the products and services for this client, and then eventually servicing them. These are bits and pieces that my team manage, right? There's somebody that manages new cases. She's a new case manager personnel. Then there's someone that takes care of client servicing only. We have somebody else that looks into the medical insurance requirements of our clients and their potential claim servicing. And then I've got two analysts who basically manage all the number crunching and things like that I may know how to do, but don't really enjoy. I enjoy the big picture bit, right? Whereas their unique ability is sitting in front of those multiple screens, crunching various numbers and seeing what is the right solution for this client. So it's always a discussion-based thing for our clients, right? I don't think that there is a one solution that can be copied and pasted across clients. Literally every specific situation that we deal with, every single entrepreneur that we deal with have got some similarities and some differences. So the solutions may be similar or even identical to the average Joe, but the application of those solutions and the problems that they are trying to solve are very different, are completely different. And to answer your other question, the fact is we onboard only 4 new clients a year. To give you some idea, in the last 10 years, I may have onboarded at best about 30 or 35 new clients, right? My total clientele today may be about 140, 145 clients right now. But that has to do with a lot of legacy clients who've been with me since I was in my early 20s. And because we made a promise and a commitment to take care of their policies and service them, I've not ended those relationships with them and I've not handed them over to somebody else. We still service them. But we identified along the way that time is limited and we may not be in a position to continue onboarding 10, 15, 20 clients a year. So that's the reason why we scaled down to 3 or 4 clients a year. And now, given that we're onboarding 3 or 4 new clients a year, there is ample time for us to focus on each of their individual requirements and service them in that manner. And that's the reason why we have a fairly larger team than the average advisor. I'm the only producer on the team, so to speak, but we have a larger support function team because it is very critical for me that the clients we have onboarded in the past and that we continue to onboard, that their needs are met completely. I have an analogy that I use with client servicing, and I say, client and user experience is that nobody pays for mediocrity. Nobody, regardless of the size of the client, whether it's someone at the entry-level job or someone who's a billionaire, whatever they pay for, they need to get their money's worth. So nobody pays for mediocrity. So our team is constantly engages each other in conversations about how we want to make the client feel and who is our right fit client. What's the definition? What's important to them? What are the dangers? What are the opportunities? What are their strengths? And what do we need to do to eliminate these things for them or enhance these things for them?
Thanks for that, Rickson. I think you touched upon a point earlier as well, just in terms of the technology that has kind of come in, let's say, over the last few years. I think it's massively changed just the face of the market itself. But clearly, I mean, you're in an industry where it's trust based. You close deals based on discussions, on doing a proper analysis of customers' needs. But clearly, I think what we've seen in terms of the whole digital transformation space, in terms of self-service, having automated, reminders going out to customers, notifications, chat GPT that's now coming along the way. How has that kind of changed the way you'll do business? Has that changed? Does that really impact the way you'll conduct your business? Because clearly, I mean, as you mentioned, you would like to be the one who kind of, carries that check when customers are most in need of it. I mean, how do you kind of balance the two out?
This is an interesting one, okay? Because this is an evolving thought process even for me, simply because it's tech-based and tech is evolving on a regular basis. AI is evolving on a regular basis. What I thought about this, if you asked me 5 years ago, and if you ask me today, you might have complete polar opposite opinions, because in those 5 years, so much more has changed and accelerated, right? The change has been exponential. And I'll tell you what I've noticed over the years. There's been, in my industry, a lot of people initially, when robo advice came out, a lot of people said, oh my God, we're going to lose our jobs to AI. We're going to lose our jobs to X. A lot of people thought that, and a lot of people threw in the towel earlier. They said, this is not my job. This is not my industry I want to be in anymore, because I'm going to be replaced by, Michael Knight's kit, a talking car. So my thoughts on this today are very different. Even at that point in time, I didn't subscribe to that thought process. I do believe that tech today is enhancing what you as an advisor can do for your clients. I mean, the simple amount of computing that's available today on this small device today may be a couple of million times more powerful than my first computer I ever had was a 386DX2. It had 128 megabytes of hard disk space and 4 megabytes of RAM. I mean, my watch today has got more than that from a computing standpoint. So if you think about it today, if you use devices like these, smart devices, tech, and stuff like that, they can actually enhance what you can deliver and how you can deliver to your clients by automating a lot of things, simplifying a lot of things. In my first job in the life insurance business, I had to walk around with a rate card. It was a physical book. We had this table that had the people's age at one side and the level of cover on the other side. And then based on that, we computed, or the term of the policy on the other side. And based on that, we compute, okay, if you're 40 years old and you require a life insurance policy for 20 years, then this is the value, this is the charge per milli for life cover. Per milli would be per thousand of life cover. And then you multiply that into the amount of thousands that the client wanted to buy. And that's what we did. We don't do that today. Today, we punch in the metrics onto a software and it spits out an illustration. There's no room for error over here unless you input incorrectly. I think that where things are being lost is, instead of looking at tech as an ally, a lot of people are trying to fight tech. You have to remember that products and services can be purchased online as well. There's nothing wrong with that, as was true for the travel business. The travel business moved online, and a lot of people use various websites to purchase and fulfill their travel needs. But it really depends upon what are you looking out for. There are still travel agents in this market that are immensely successful. They just carved a niche for themselves where they are not irrelevant. In fact, they're irreplaceable for their clients. So you've got to think about it from that perspective. What are you delivering to the end user, to your customer, to your client base, that can make you completely relevant in their lives and irreplaceable in their lives? For me, I feel that the relationship point of it, the fact that I know my clients inside out, I know their needs, I know where their kids go to school, I know their favorite restaurants, I know everything about them, this makes a huge difference. And can AI do that? For sure, definitely. But is there a human one-to-one interaction that's there? No. But I do believe that my service cannot be to every single person. There is a segment in the market that loves AI related stuff. They're happy to do stuff online. They don't want to have another conversation with the third person to talk about their wants and needs in life insurance. They need a calculator. They need a link to purchase. They need to swipe it, and they buy. That's fine. As long as you're clear that that is not your market, you're not competing with that technology. My market is people that need to see somebody physically, that they can introduce to their spouses and say, if something happens, call Rickson, right? That's my market. So I'm not competing with AI, but there are certain features that AI has today, that technology has today, which hugely help me enhance my proposition to my clients.
Yeah, perfect. No, I think very well put, Rickson. I mean, clearly, I think, a lot of, advisors out there are trying to kind of, fight that technology. Clearly, I think that's a losing battle. But as you rightly said, if you kind of use that as a bit of an ally, I think, it can work wonders.
Yeah.
And obviously, technology isn't going to stop. It's just going to get even better, I guess, or
Absolutely.
yeah. So I think use it to your advantage rather than really fighting it. Cool.
Yep.
So I guess Rickson, we're kind of coming towards the end of this podcast, but clearly I think it's been a really great conversation. That we've had. I think there are a lot of gold nuggets over here. Not just for me, but I'm sure for a lot of other folks who are going to be watching this. There's one that I want to just pick your brains on is in terms of
Sure.
whilst people are kind of setting up businesses and going the entrepreneurial route. Um, can they learn something from your model in terms of niching down and just might be a couple of pointers really in terms of that. If you can just kind of expand on that a little bit before we wrap up.
You have to. Sorry, I'm terribly sorry. I didn't quite get that question. Could you repeat that for me?
Yeah. So what I was saying is obviously businesses today want to kind of go and acquire more customers and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But if they
Okay.
really want to kind of, focus on a specific area, are there any tips, tricks that you can kind of, provide in terms of, I mean, clearly you've kind of niched down, your revenue has kind of predominantly remained the same. Anything that they can take away from that kind of model?
Okay. Actually, this is a great question. So I'll correct one thing about that question though, is our revenues have not remained the same. Our revenues have gone up about 8 times, right? And the exponential growth we're seeing in revenue comes from the next part of what I want to address, and that's specialization. Today, and I started this conversation with you saying, in the past, if somebody asked me, who do you want to be referred to? I would normally say anybody. But today, if you came to me and said, Rickson, I'm the referral genie, right? Rub my lamp and ask me to introduce you to anybody, and it's done. They'll become your clients. Who do you want? I'll tell you. I work best with entrepreneurs in the age groups of 38 to 60 years old, predominantly. That's 99% of my clientele. Married with children, I work best with people who've got relationships and are not single per se, because we're talking about life insurance. I work best with people from the subcontinent or the Arab world because culturally, I have a lot in common with them. I've spent 40 years in this market in the UAE. I understand Arab culture, but I'm from India, which has got very close ties to the UAE. Most of my clientele are either Indian, Pakistani, Arabs, people that we have something in common with. And this is the easy part of it. We do a lot of business with people, with friends and family, with people who are around us. People who know me as a whole person rather than people who know me as just a life insurance expert. So it's the establishment of trust. My point towards all of this is specialization, right? Most of the times businesses, and I'm not talking about sales advisors or consultants within businesses, but I'm talking about businesses. In most cases, there are businesses that are very unclear about who is their right fit client. Who should they be talking to? They're unsure about it. And this is the problem, right? If that direction from the top is not clear, then how do you expect your sales advisors or your consultants within your enterprise or company to be able to make those decisions or make those bifurcations clearly? I think it's very critical today as a business. If you are a business that's clear about who is your end client, what are you selling, to who is it going to benefit, what problem of what kind of a person does it take away? Then you've got something going. Then drilling it down to your team is easy. Hiring is easy. The service proposition, the customer services is to a specific individual, not to the masses. So I feel that specialization is critical, and that specialization is easily forgotten in the sales industry. In the sales space, it's easily forgotten. So I feel that specialization probably makes all the difference and could possibly lead to exponential growth, income, revenue, teams. It can also make the teams very lean, if you ask me.
Yeah. Cool. Great. Thanks, Rickson. And that was really my last question on this podcast. Clearly, it's been really good to have you on. Thank you so much for making the time. But just before we let you go, clearly, I mean, you do a lot of stuff just from, apart from advising, HNIs. What kind of hobbies do you have? I mean, anything in particular that, you want to kind of talk about, which could probably, inspire the younger generation out there?
I am very distracted. I'm mildly ADD, if not more than mildly. So I need something that constantly challenges me. There are very few things that I've stuck to long term, and the industry and the life insurance bit and what I do for a living and my marriage and my children are a few things that feature over there. But over the period of time, I've realized that I need to spend more time with myself. So I do a lot of endurance-based activities now, whether this is running longer distances. And I think it began with running across the Sahara Desert, doing something called a Marathon des Sables. I think there should be something over here. That is the Marathon des Sables, which is a 250-kilometer race across the Sahara Desert.
Isn't that, sorry, just on that, isn't that one of the toughest runs out there?
So, if you Google it, it's probably what it says, but I would bet anything that today there are so many that are out there, which are probably so much more tougher than this. I feel that it may be tough because of the individual and having to deal with the elements. Yes, to the masses, it may feature as one of the toughest races out there, but to somebody who's in endurance and ultra racing and stuff like that, it may not qualify anymore as one of the toughest races. But the point I'm trying to make is the reason for me to go through all of that stuff was to spend more time internally with myself. So give me an opportunity to get out on my own and do a 2-hour or a 3-hour run for training, or in a race, spend 5 to 22 hours doing my thing with myself. And I find that I always come back having sorted out so many things in my head, whether it's business related, family related. And the reason for that probably has to do with the fact that in our lives today, there's no pause. We're constantly jumping from one to the other. Our devices give us that as well. So we're never even stopped at the signal light in our car and doing nothing. Even at the signal, we'll pull our phone out and we'll scroll through it. So there's no pause. These kind of things gives me that pause. And that pause allows me to think and go internal, reach inside rather than, to somebody else. And that I feel has made a big difference. So I'd say I'm not someone who's here to inspire anybody, because I've taken a lot of inspiration from so many other people. But I do believe that what your neighbor is doing next door could, the average Joe doing something next door differently than you is something that you could learn from, right? And what I'm thankful for and blessed about today with technology and to live in this era is we can draw, if you ask me today who my role models are, we can draw inspiration from role models that don't even know you exist, that they are your role models. They don't even know that. But what they're doing on a daily basis could inspire you, could motivate change. So all I'd say is push yourselves outside your comfort zone. Whether it's physically, spiritually, business-wise, it doesn't matter. Push yourselves outside your comfort zone. And the results and what lies beyond that door is unbelievable. It will make you a believer. Yeah.
Cool. Thanks very much, Rickson. Good stuff. I think that's pretty much that's really a wrap on this episode. But again, thank you very much for coming on. And again, where can we find you? Or any potential customers, clients? Where can they find what you do, and how can they get in touch?
We're very active on most of the social media channels. So if you search me on YouTube, we've got a channel running which posts everything. On Instagram, it's Ask Rickson. Is my business channel per se. LinkedIn, we're very active as well. And I have a Linktree blog as well as a website which lists everything. So if you just Google Rickson Dsouza, I'm pretty sure you'll come across all of these different channels that we post as much information out as possible.
All right. Thanks, Dan, Rickson. And enjoy the tennis game that you're going to go after this one. And let's catch up for coffee sometime.